The diamond ring hovered in front of my face like a tiny spotlight I never asked for. Blake was down on one knee in the center of Riverside Grill, his voice loud and confident as he asked me to marry him. The entire restaurant had gone silent except for the clinking of champagne glasses and a few gasps from nearby tables. Cameras were already out. Strangers were recording. My best friend Emma sat frozen across from us, her smile too wide, her eyes confused. Something inside me twisted hard. My heart wasn't racing from excitement, it was racing from alarm. This wasn't romantic. This felt like a performance I hadn't auditioned for. And somewhere deep in my gut, a voice whispered, "Run." The applause started like thunder rolling in from every direction. People I didn't know were cheering. A man in a suit raised his glass. A woman near the bar had tears in her eyes. Blake's grin stretched wider as he held the ring higher, soaking in the attention like he'd just won something. But I felt trapped. My throat closed up. My hands went cold. I opened my mouth to say something. Anything, but nothing came out. Emma leaned forward slightly, her smile wavering. She could tell. She always could. Blake squeezed my hand tighter. "Say yes, Cindy," he whispered, but his tone had an edge, like he was reminding me of a script I was supposed to follow. That's when I saw her. The waitress who'd been serving our table all night suddenly stopped mid-step. She was holding a tray of drinks, but her eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that made my stomach drop. She wasn't smiling anymore. She wasn't clapping. Her face had gone pale, and she was staring at me like she was watching a car crash in slow motion. Then she did something that made my blood run cold. She shook her head. Just once. Subtle enough that no one else noticed, but I saw it. And in that moment, I knew. Something was very, very wrong with the man kneeling in front of me. I forced a smile so wide my cheeks hurt. "Oh my God," I whispered, pressing my hand to my chest like I was overwhelmed. I wasn't lying about being overwhelmed. I just wasn't overwhelmed with joy. Blake's eyes softened. He thought I was about to cry happy tears. The crowd leaned in closer. Someone yelled, "Say yes," from the back of the restaurant. I laughed nervously and covered my mouth, buying myself precious seconds to think. My brain was screaming at me to stop, to ask questions, to demand answers, but I couldn't do that here. Not in front of 50 strangers with their phones out. So I played the part. I let my voice shake. I let my eyes water, and I waited. The waitress moved past our table moments later, her tray balanced perfectly in one hand. As she set down Blake's drink, she leaned in slightly and slipped something into my lap. A napkin, folded tight. Her eyes met mine again for half a second, and then she was gone, disappearing into the kitchen before anyone noticed. My heart hammered against my ribs. Blake was still talking, something about how long he'd been planning this, how much he loved me. I barely heard him. My fingers closed around the napkin under the table. I unfolded it carefully, keeping it hidden in my lap. 4 words were scrawled in blue ink. "Check his other phone." I excused myself to the bathroom, my legs shaking so badly I almost stumbled. Blake frowned. "Now, babe, everyone's waiting." I forced another smile. "I just need a second. I'm so emotional right now." He softened immediately, kissing my hand like a prince from a fairy tale. The crowd awed. Emma gave me a concerned look but didn't follow. I walked as calmly as I could to the back hallway, pushed open the bathroom door, and locked myself in a stall. My hands were trembling so hard I could barely hold my phone. Other phone. What other phone? Blake only had one. Or so I thought. Then I remembered. 2 weeks ago, I'd seen a second phone in his gym bag. He said it was for work. I never questioned it. I pulled up the tracking app we'd both agreed to install months ago. It was supposed to be for safety, so we'd always know where each other were. I opened it now with a sinking feeling in my chest. His main phone showed he was still at the restaurant, but there was another device. Another number linked to his Apple ID. A phone I'd never seen him use. I clicked on it. The location history loaded slowly. My stomach turned inside out. That phone had been to the same address 17 times in the past month. An apartment across town. The same apartment. Over and over. Always late at night. Always when he said he was working late or at the gym. I pressed my hand against the stall wall to keep from collapsing. I scrolled further, my vision blurring with tears I refused to let fall. Text messages synced to his iCloud account appeared on my screen. Messages I was never supposed to see. Messages between Blake and someone named Vanessa. The timestamps made my skin crawl. Can't wait to see you tonight. I miss you so much. Soon we'll be together for real. And then I saw it. A message from 3 weeks ago. Blake had sent her a photo of the same restaurant, the same private corner booth, with a caption that made my blood turn to ice. Here's where I'll do it. Wish me luck. He'd sent her a picture of where he was going to propose to me, and she'd responded, "You've got this, babe." Third time's the charm. Third time. I sat on the closed toilet lid and stared at those 3 words until they burned into my brain. This wasn't the first time Blake had proposed to someone. It wasn't even the second. I opened his photo library, my hands moving on autopilot now. There were folders I'd never noticed before. Hidden albums. I clicked on one labeled Backup. And there they were. Photos of Blake on one knee, same pose, same smile, different women, different restaurants, different rings. He'd done this before, twice. And both times, according to the messages I found next, he'd convinced them to move in, combine finances, and then drain their accounts before disappearing. I was number 3. And I was about to be his biggest score yet. I walked back to the table with my head held high and my decision made. Blake stood up the moment he saw me, his face lighting up like I was about to make his night. The crowd quieted again. Cameras turned back on. He reached for my hand, his grip warm and confident. "So?" he asked, loud enough for everyone to hear. "What do you say, Cindy?" I looked at him, really looked at him, at the man I'd trusted, the man I'd loved, the man who'd spent 6 months setting me up to be his next victim. I smiled, took the ring from his hand, and placed it gently on the table between us. "No," I said quietly. "I'm saying no." The silence that followed was deafening. Blake's face went through 5 emotions in 3 seconds. Confusion, shock, embarrassment, anger, and then something darker. Something desperate. He laughed awkwardly, like I'd just told a joke only he didn't get. "What? Babe, what are you talking about?" His voice was too loud, too forced. People were staring now, but not with admiration, with discomfort. I picked up my purse and stood. "I'm saying no," I repeated calmly. "I don't want to marry you." His hand shot out and grabbed my wrist, not hard, but firm. "Cindy, sit down, we need to talk about this." I pulled my arm free and looked him directly in the eyes. "There's nothing to talk about." Then I turned and walked out of the restaurant, leaving Blake standing alone in front of 50 strangers with a ring he couldn't return. The text started before I even made it to my car. "Cindy, what the hell just happened? You embarrassed me in front of everyone. Call me. Now." I blocked his number. Then I blocked him on every social media platform I had. I wasn't going to give him the chance to gaslight me, to twist the story, to convince me I'd overreacted, because I hadn't. I'd seen the truth. And the truth was that Blake wasn't the man I thought he was. He was a con artist, a manipulator, a predator who targeted women with good jobs and stable finances, and I was done being his next victim. I sat in my car for 10 minutes, breathing slowly, letting the adrenaline drain out of my body. Then I drove to Emma's house and told her everything. Emma didn't say, "I told you so," even though she could have. She'd never liked Blake. She said he was too smooth, too perfect, too quick to move in and start talking about our future. I'd thought she was being overprotective. Now I knew she'd been right. We sat on her couch for hours while I showed her everything I'd found. The messages, the photos, the pattern. She went pale. "Cindy, this is beyond cheating. This is fraud." I nodded. "I know." She grabbed my hand. "We need to report this." I shook my head. "Not yet. If I go to the police now, he'll know I'm on to him. He'll disappear. I need to do this carefully." Emma didn't argue. She just handed me her laptop and said, "Then, let's start documenting everything." The next morning, I opened a new bank account. I transferred every dollar I had out of the joint account Blake and I had opened 3 months ago. Then I contacted my landlord and explained that I needed to change the locks immediately. Blake had a key. He couldn't have access anymore. I filed a restraining order request, not because I thought he'd hurt me physically, but because I wanted a legal record that I'd asked him to stay away. I took screenshots of every message, every photo, every piece of evidence I had. I saved them in 3 different places: my phone, a USB drive, and Emma's cloud storage. I wasn't taking any chances. Blake had spent months setting me up. Now it was my turn to be strategic. That's when I found the debts. I logged into the joint credit card account we'd opened together, the one Blake said we'd use for emergencies. My stomach dropped. There were charges I'd never made, thousands of dollars in luxury purchases, hotels, jewelry, expensive dinners at places I'd never been to. He'd been using my credit, spending money in my name, building debt I'd be responsible for. I immediately called the credit card company and reported the fraud. They froze the account and opened an investigation. Then I pulled my credit report. There were 2 other cards I'd never applied for. Both maxed out, both in my name. Blake had stolen my identity, and he'd been planning to leave me buried in debt while he moved on to his next target. I wasn't the first. Emma found them through a Facebook group for women recovering from financial abuse. 2 women. Different cities, same story. Both had dated Blake under slightly different names. Both had been publicly proposed to in restaurants. Both had said yes, and both had been left financially destroyed within 6 months. One woman, Olivia, had lost her savings. The other, Jessica, had nearly lost her house. Neither had reported him because they were too ashamed, too embarrassed, too afraid no one would believe them. But when Emma reached out to them and explained what had happened to me, they both agreed to talk. We met over video call, and, for the first time, I realized how close I'd come to losing everything. Olivia cried when she saw the photos I'd found on Blake's phone. "That's the same ring," she whispered. "He proposed to me with that exact ring 2 years ago." Jessica nodded. "He probably returns it every time and gets store credit." We compared notes. Blake had used the same tactics on all 3 of us. The whirlwind romance, the talk of future plans, the joint accounts, the expensive lifestyle funded by our money, the sudden work emergencies that explained his absences. Even the proposal locations were similar, always public, always crowded, always designed to pressure us into saying yes. "He's not just a cheater," I said quietly. "He's running a con." Olivia agreed. "And we're going to stop him." The 3 of us decided right then to go to the police together. Blake's story started to fall apart publicly before we even filed the report. People from the restaurant had posted videos of the proposal online, and people who knew Blake started commenting. "Wait, didn't he propose to someone else last year? This guy looks familiar. Pretty sure I saw him on a dating app while he was supposedly engaged." His social media, which he'd always carefully curated, became a minefield. Friends started asking questions. His boss saw the videos. His coworkers started talking. And Blake, desperate to control the narrative, made the worst possible move. He started lying. He told people I'd said yes, and then changed my mind. He said I was unstable, that I'd overreacted. But the more he talked, the more his stories contradicted each other, and people noticed. Within a week, Blake's reputation was in freefall. His gym buddies stopped responding to his texts. His coworkers avoided him. Even his own family started questioning him after Olivia reached out to his sister and explained everything. The videos from the restaurant had gone semi-viral in our city. People were sharing them with captions like "red flag behavior" and "dodged a bullet." Blake tried to delete his social media accounts, but the internet doesn't forget. Screenshots were everywhere. And then the police called him in for questioning. Because by then, Jessica, Olivia, and I had filed formal reports. And the evidence was overwhelming. Blake hadn't just lied to us. He'd committed fraud, identity theft, financial abuse. And the district attorney's office was very interested in building a case. Blake sent me one final message before I blocked his email too. "Cindy, please, let's talk about this like adults. I made mistakes, but we can fix this. I love you." I stared at those words for a long time, and then I deleted them without responding. Because the Blake I thought I loved had never existed. He was a character, a role he played to get what he wanted. And I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of thinking I still cared. I didn't owe him closure. I didn't owe him an explanation. I didn't owe him anything. The only thing I owed myself was to move forward. And that's exactly what I did. The legal separation of our finances took 3 weeks to finalize. My lawyer was thorough. Every joint account was closed. Every fraudulent charge was disputed. Every debt Blake had created in my name was documented and reported. He tried to fight it at first, claiming I was being vindictive. But once the fraud investigation was officially opened, his lawyer advised him to stop. He had no defense. The paper trail was clear. I walked away with my credit intact, my savings protected, and zero financial connection to Blake. He, on the other hand, was facing criminal charges and a mountain of debt he'd have to answer for. The difference between us was simple. I'd been smart, he'd been greedy. And greed always leaves a trail. Blake lost his job 6 weeks after the proposal. His employer found out about the fraud investigation and quietly let him go. No announcement, no explanation. He just stopped showing up. I heard through mutual friends that he'd tried to get hired at 3 other companies, but word had spread. No one wanted to hire someone with a pending criminal case for financial fraud. His LinkedIn profile, once polished and professional, went dormant. His apartment, the one he'd been so proud of, was listed for rent 2 months later. He couldn't afford it anymore. And according to Olivia, who kept tabs on the case, he'd moved back in with his parents in another state. The man who'd built his entire life on charm and lies had nowhere left to hide. Months passed. No calls, no texts, no dramatic confrontations. Blake simply disappeared from my life, like he'd never been there at all. And honestly, that was the best possible outcome. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need him to apologize or beg for forgiveness. I just needed him gone. And he was. The waitress who'd saved me, her name was Lauren, reached out through Emma weeks later. She said she'd recognized Blake from a previous job. He'd done the same thing to a coworker of hers, and she couldn't stay silent when she saw him about to do it again. I thanked her. I told her she'd changed my life. She just smiled and said, "I'm glad you listened." I didn't just survive what Blake tried to do to me. I thrived. I got a promotion at work. I moved into a new apartment, one that was mine alone. I reconnected with old friends I'd lost touch with during the relationship. I started going to therapy to process everything, not because I was broken, but because I wanted to understand how I'd missed the signs. And slowly, I rebuilt my life. Not the life Blake had planned for me. Not the life I thought I wanted when I was with him, but a life that was better. Stronger. And entirely my own. I stopped looking over my shoulder, stopped wondering if he'd come back. Because I knew deep down that he couldn't touch me anymore. I'd made sure of that. Looking back, I realized the most powerful thing I ever did was say no. Not dramatically, not with a scene, just quietly, firmly, and without explanation. I didn't owe Blake my reasons. I didn't owe him my future. I didn't owe him anything. And by refusing to say yes, I saved myself from a disaster I never saw coming. The ring, the applause, the pressure, none of it mattered. What mattered was that when my gut screamed danger, I listened. When a stranger risked her job to warn me, I trusted her. And when the evidence piled up, I acted. I didn't wait for permission. I didn't ask for approval. I just walked away. And that decision became the best thing I ever did for myself. I didn't say yes, and I never looked back.